Well, Glenn, we're all waiting for those 3 buzzes. 3 buzzes indicates the jury has reached a verdict, and a lot of times we've been hearing 2 buzzes, meaning they need to take a break. This time we heard the first 2, and then we heard that 3rd buzz, and everyone in the courtroom jumped up, grabbed their BlackBerries, grabbed their laptops, and immediately started texting. Today, as you mentioned, a little interesting with the jury deliberations. We've been sitting there since 8:30 this morning when they resumed the deliberations, and they didn't take a break. We originally thought around maybe 9:30 that they were going to be taking their mid-morning break. They didn't. They indicated with 2 buzzes, as you mentioned, they needed more toilet paper and paper towels in the bathroom, and then they continued to work through. And the fact that they weren't taking a break, I noticed it was 10, 10:10, 10:15. Why haven't they taken a break yet? And as we now know, they were really close to a verdict. The bailiff did go and check in before they indicated that they had reached a verdict to check on them, and I heard laughing coming from the jury room. I mean, loud laughter, not from one person, but maybe a half dozen people. So at that point, you could probably tell that they had reached their verdict, they reached their decision. We're looking at a rough amount of 8.5 hours to reach this verdict. They had a full day on Friday, which was 6 hours, and then roughly 2.5 hours today to reach this verdict. Is it guilty? Is it not guilty? You'll have to ask the legal analysts what they think about this, but it took about 8.5 hours, and a lot of people were predicting after Friday went all day that maybe we'd see a verdict come Monday or Tuesday, Glenn.
Okay, Brandi, well,
Hi, Glenn. Yeah, we're on the 12th floor here. This is where the media has been set up, and I got to tell you, the last maybe 15 minutes, we've seen people whizzing in and out of here now that a verdict has been reached and that word has gone out. You were talking to Eric Spillman about the crowd outside, and we saw a lot of Jackson supporters inside the courtroom as well. Some of them were allowed in. They were sitting along with the media, and their reaction was they bolted out the door as well to tell all of their friends and family and other Jackson supporters. The big thing now is, of course, what verdict did the jury reach? And I got to tell you, for the 8.5 hours roughly this jury deliberated, they didn't ask for one piece of testimony to be read back. They didn't make any special requests. The only thing they ever requested from the deputy in the courtroom were breaks, their lunch break, and some more paper towels, toilet paper, some highlighters. So in these 8.5 hours, they seem to reach a pretty quick consensus. The jurors I'm looking for to see their reaction when they come back in the courtroom are juror number 9, juror number 10, and juror number 12. These were the most visual, kind of expressive jurors in the courtroom. Number 9, a man, an older man in his 50s, towards the end of the trial was getting very tired, very relaxed, seemed to have very heavy eyes in the courtroom. Juror number 10 was the most expressive juror in the courtroom. She, at times, when she'd get either frustrated or tired, would put her head in her hands. She sometimes would shake her head when the defense was trying to prove a point or make an argument in this case. And then juror number 12 is the juror at times I saw doodling in court. And he also, towards the end, was getting tired. Those are the 3 jurors in the front row that seem to be the most expressive. I'm curious to see what their demeanor is when they come back in the courtroom, and also to find out who the jury foreperson is in all of this, who's going to be leading and handing that verdict over. So we're going to be heading down momentarily. Obviously, we have like a 2-hour window that the court has been giving us before they officially announce the verdict. That way, the Jackson family has time to come down. The attorneys have been notified. Conrad Murray will make his way down. But you got to imagine, Glenn, this crowd outside is going to be the actual cause of death. This is Brandi Hitt, now live on the 12th floor of the criminal courts building. I've been in the courtroom every single day for this trial, including those closing arguments, which you just saw. And I was in the courtroom again today when the jury gave those 3 buzzes indicating it had finally reached a verdict. We are live with team coverage here on KTLA 5, and my colleague Manny Medrano, our legal, and all of a sudden, we heard 1, 2, 3. 3 buzzes is key. If the jury buzzes once, then it means we're in session deliberating. If the jury buzzes twice, it means we need to take a break. 3 times is the verdict, and that's what we heard today, Glenn. 3 buzzes, and we got it confirmed with the deputies. They have, in fact, reached a verdict. And I was in the courtroom, which I was completely surprised because, as you know, Judge Pastor, a no-nonsense judge, these deputies have kept everyone in line. But when David Walgren left after the cross-examination cross-examination of the addiction specialist for the defense, and when he left after his closing arguments, he walked out those doors of the courtroom, and all the Jackson supporters who were in the hallway erupted loudly. You could hear it from inside the courtroom. They were cheering, they were clapping, and on both occasions the deputies had to go outside and say, calm down, but those same people were always allowed back into the hallway. So everyone out there feels that David Walgren did a great job. In the courtroom, he was very confident. I have to say, I did notice something too, and I do get a little nervous on a couple of occasions, including when he began his closing arguments. I noticed on the podium his hands would shake just a little bit, but after a couple of minutes, it stopped. I was noticing that in the courtroom, but he commanded that courtroom. He was very aggressive during cross-examination. I know too aggressive, some attorneys will say, but that kind of aggressive assertion is what got the reaction outside the courtroom. And on several occasions, he's also spoken to the Jackson family in quiet huddles. We didn't see much from Ms. Brazil during these proceedings. It was obvious that David Walgren was the lead, and you could tell during even sidebars, he was stern, he was firm, and that's what we saw on camera, and that's what you at home saw on camera as well. Every time Kathryn Jackson has been in the courtroom and that moment has been brought up, it has been an emotional moment for the family. Anytime they brought up the moment when Kathryn Jackson was told that Michael Jackson had died, or when they brought up the fact that the children had been notified that their father was dead, that's when you saw Kathryn Jackson in a tissue wiping her eyes from under her glasses. That's when you saw even LaToya Jackson wiping her eyes. On one occasion early on in the trial, after that first time the testimony was given about that, Kathryn Jackson didn't come back to court that day. This has obviously been very, very difficult for her. I mean, this is her son we're talking about here. And I'm curious to see which members of the Jackson family show up today. I have to tell you, the person we've seen the most in the courtroom nearly every single day has been Brandi Jackson. Brandi Jackson's been there along with Rebe Jackson, I would say second. She's missed maybe the last week recently. After that, Kathryn and Joe Jackson have been there very often, along with, after that, I would say Janet Jackson's probably made about 6 or 7 appearances. We haven't seen Jermaine at all lately, so I'm curious to know who may be in town now. Janet, you know, as you may have heard, has had a tour that she's been dealing with, but by far the most emotion has come from Kathryn Jackson herself in this trial.
Okay, well, it's been about
maybe they have control of the situation, Glenn.
You know, Brandi, Leila Feinstein here. This is very interesting. You're talking about hidden extra security. Were they able to give you any kind of numbers to quantify how many hidden security guards they actually have on hand?
Hell in the morning when they entered the courtroom for closing arguments, they had more energy. Towards the end of testimony and evidence, they were getting tired. When they knew it was the day for closing arguments, this jury had a lot of energy. But as the day went on and we heard facial expressions, they were silent. They were stoic. When they entered the courtroom, 2 of them, jurors number 5 and number 6, had a slight smirk, but everyone else, stone-faced. They sat back area where they're escorted out. I was told they're going to be going down to be giving some sort of statement or news release, but we could hear them saying, "Thank you so much for your support. This is the verdict. We are so happy with this verdict today. Thank you so much for your support." Hi, Glenn. You know, when David Walgren and Deborah Brazil made their way down the courtroom today, I mentioned that the hallway leading up to Department 107 was packed with people. It was so loud when they walked. Obviously, if Conrad Murray was found not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, they likely would have made a statement. But right now, I'm assuming they're probably not going to be commenting. So that's the latest here from the 12th floor.
All right.
Allison, would that be?
Well, they may just get that wish. It may happen because I just spoke to Tanya Young-Williams. She was up here, our legal analyst who's been here on KTLA. She was downstairs, saw David Walgren, saw Ms. Brazil down there. They were looking through the glass outside at the madness going on outside, and they said they may address the crowd. So if that's what the crowd is waiting for out there, that wish may be granted. We're waiting to see if they do go out and go to those podium and the microphones that we thought the Jackson family may use, but we found out the Jacksons are not going to be making any sort of statement. The podium is still there, so if David Walgren and Deborah Brazil go up, They may be able to give a statement. We'll be standing by. I wanted to let you know something that happened in the courtroom that we hadn't addressed just yet. And besides the tension and the anticipation and the heat that was building up in that courtroom with so many people packed inside waiting for the verdict, we waited an extra 10 to 15 minutes because we were waiting on Conrad Murray to show up. He was the last one to enter the courtroom. The Jacksons had all filed in line. The prosecution had sat down. The media was there. The massive presence of deputies was inside, and we waited, and we were all looking around, and the only empty seat was for Conrad Murray. So he was the last person to enter the courtroom with his mother and also with Nicole Alvarez, the mother of his child, and his girlfriend. They all entered finally, and he took the seat, and that's when they alerted Judge Pastor that we were ready to go. We were ready for the verdict to come in. And those alternate jurors, I'm sure you saw it, he thanked them a lot because they didn't really get to have a say, but if they were needed, they were the backups. They were smiling at the judge. Then the jury came in, and as I said earlier, stone-faced. They did not smile at first. They didn't make any face. Couple little smirks, but nothing significant. And then they delivered the verdict that the Jackson family was waiting for. You could hear the shriek. You knew it directly came from LaToya Jackson and also Kathy Hilton. They held each other's hands. In fact, the whole Jackson row started grabbing hands before the verdict was read, and obviously they are celebrating tonight. They, when they exited the courtroom, thanked all of the Jackson fans for their support slowly as they made their way down the hall. And as I said earlier, that hall lined on both sides with people who supported the Jackson family, and obviously they're very happy with this verdict today.
More details, Brandi.
Micah and Cher, you could feel the heat from everyone being packed into this courtroom. The Jackson family sitting on the edge of their seat, holding each other's hands while they waited for this verdict to be read. And when they heard the word guilty, many of them started to cry. Jermaine Jackson told fans who gathered outside the courtroom in the hallway that he was very happy with today's verdict. Conrad Murray will be back in court on November 29th for his sentencing, and he faces up to 4 years behind bars. Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Brandi Hitt, KTLA 5 News. Conrad Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the death of Michael Jackson. I'm Brandi Hitt live in downtown Los Angeles with how the Murrays and the Jacksons reacted in the courtroom. Be back in court on November 29th. That is when he's going to be sentenced for this involuntary manslaughter charge, and he faces up to 4 years behind bars. Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Brandi Hitt, KTLA 5 News.
Brandi, thank you.
Good evening, Cher. Conrad Murray has traded his suit for a jailhouse jumpsuit, and tonight the LA Times is reported that he is on suicide watch as he awaits his sentence for the death of Michael Jackson. Now, I sat behind the Jackson family in the courtroom today, and Conrad Murray will learn his fate on November 29th when he is sentenced. His defense team, which did not hold a news conference today after the verdict, does say that it plans to appeal this verdict. Reporting live in downtown at the Men's Central Jail, Brandi Hitt, KTLA 5 News.
Brandi, thank you.